Lights, camera, action. All right, we're live.
Welcome to this week in Statecraft Series. We have a
Yes.
special guest with us today. His name is Joosh. Joosh, would
Joosh.
you like to introduce yourself?
Yo, I'm Joosh, and I'm a Marxist-Leninist.
Alright.
Alright.
Fucking cringe.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Cringe.
Fucking cringe.
Oh.
Yeah.
So the first question I have for you is, if we were to throw you into the wood chipper, which would you prefer, feet first or head first?
Head first.
Head
Okay,
first.
we'll
Oh,
respect that.
We'll respect that, yeah.
All right, Sonic. What's our topic for today?
Today, folks, we are talking about immigration. We were going to talk about Israel-Palestine out of spite of someone else, but then just today, Juice started bringing up immigration. Me and him were discussing it, and then Delta was like, hey, you know what? Let's just fucking talk about that today. So we're now talking about immigration.
All righty.
Let's go.
So since this is Joosh's topic, Joosh,
Yes.
what do you think about immigration?
In the modern day, I think it needs to be restricted. But I think it more so, especially in the U.S., the topic cannot be discussed without first also bringing up U.S. interventionism and imperialism in Latin America.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is that it?
Anything else with
nothing
that?
else to
That's
say?
it. That's
That's my opening statement.
That's your opening statement?
Well, this isn't a debate. It's just say whatever you want.
We're discussing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So say as you please.
So I believe that immigration in the current day, with all the issues facing Latin American countries, only ends up harming those countries and us, because our foreign activities are greatly harming those countries to begin with, and not allowing them to develop. And then the hard-working people from those countries, unable to find work over there, come to us, depriving their home country of labor and intellectuals.
Do you believe that this is the case always and forever? Like all cases of immigration are harming? For example, just as like an example, I have Invisaligns and I went in today to get it messed with. And the tech who was working on me, she was from Mexico, and I can see what you mean by that because she was a smart person, well driven and all that. But she's living here in America, so I can see what you're saying. Are you saying that like it would have been better if she had stayed in Mexico for both Mexico and America? Like all times, there's no instance where she should have come to America and worked here and lived here.
I think it would have been best for her to. It probably would have been best for her to stay in Mexico. In terms of Mexico itself. As for us, it benefits us, but I do think it is exploitative in nature. Because a lot of these Latin American people, they come over and we pay them significantly less than we do even the average American. And we continue to encourage this because it's cheap labor, right? It's profitable. As for Mexico, it's not as much of a dire situation as the rest of Latin America. So the nature of that is inherently less exploitative. Mexico is currently industrializing rather rapidly.
I mean, they're our biggest trade partner, and we get a lot of finished goods from them.
Yes. So Mexico, most of the immigration though is not coming from Mexico nowadays. It's coming from the rest of Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
So Mexico is mostly a non-issue. I don't have much issue with Mexicans coming over. Especially Mexican doctors coming over to America. That's mostly fine.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. I was driving on the I-5 the other day, and on every exit there was some migrant who was staying on the side of the roads, either selling oranges or flowers. And I noticed, and I'm willing to bet that the majority of them are like either Venezuelan or Colombian. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that's actually the majority of who's coming through the border. It's like Venezuelans, Ecuadorians, people from Colombia. So
I mean,
Venezuela is a great.
I don't necessarily see where they come from as a problem overall. I think of the freedom of movement.
I'm not saying it is.
Well, sure, but Joosh is kind of saying like there probably should be less overall. Mexicans aren't necessarily a problem, but other parts of Latin America, us taking them away, is exploitation and overall a net negative for everyone. Whereas I heavily disagree with all that. I actually think the freedom of movement is anti-exploitation. If you want to move from somewhere, then you should be able to move from somewhere and go anywhere the fuck you want.
Okay. Why is that?
Why do I think people like freedom of movement? Why do I like freedom of movement?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I have inherently libertarian values of you have the rights to do specific things, and one of those things would be movement. If you don't like where you are, then you should be allowed to move away from there and go somewhere where it is more favorable, either towards you or to you.
Okay, and I do kind of agree with that. But the issue is you can't always apply these universal things which are objectively not universal. Every single country has its own conditions,
Yeah,
which you need to take into account.
sure, but for the U.S.
In terms of
specifically,
like,
but for the U.S. specifically, we have this base idea because we don't have a American culture. We have a culture of multiculturalism where everyone, it's a mixed bag of everyone coming here and bringing the best parts of their culture and mixing in with the already established cultures. Um, so, and then, but we have this idea inherent in the U.S. of people coming here and bringing forth jobs, economics, their cultures, etc., language.
okay. The difference though is that those conditions, especially historically when people were first moving here, those were not caused by the U.S. itself.
Sure.
In terms, whenever you look at Latin America and especially Venezuela, we impact them with oppressive sanctions to the
Yeah.
point where they can't import things, they can't export things. And we have Colombia, which is essentially a puppet government of us, right on their border, which we used to antagonize Venezuela.
I think we all agree sanctions are bad. I think we would all say we should all remove sanctions. So.
Well, and yeah, I would go further to say that foreign interventionism is bad, and if Latin American or South American nations don't want to associate with us, they ought not be forced to. But I would say that they should associate with us because I think our trade and all culture. Like I went to Brazil and that was a blast, and the Brazilians were great, and I'd love to be able to have a visa-free entry into Brazil.
Yeah.
So I don't see why we shouldn't have that.
Sanctions,
I agree, and,
tariffs.
this is why,
yeah, sanctions, tariffs we want to get rid of. So.
But yeah,
intervention.
free global trade is the ideal.
Yes. Agree.
Each country should be able to trade with another country without restriction, because that allows for common prosperity for everyone of both nations.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Just like trade with
the
people.
issue here,
just like people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So people should be able to move if they want to.
No. The issue is that when America is, blockading Venezuela,
Yeah.
that is creating a cycle where we perpetually keep Venezuela in impoverished and non-industrialized conditions, and the people perpetually are seeking to move to America, providing us with a near limitless amount of immigration into the foreseeable future. That state is what I view as exploitative.
Okay, because of those.
Because we are not.
Well, because of those sanctions and stuff, then people are in a sense being forced to move over here so they have better economic prosperity. But we want to remove those sanctions, and we want to remove tariffs, have this global free trade, and which includes trade with people.
I think what Joosh is saying is that if we could get rid of all the exploitative stuff that we've talked about, he wouldn't have as much of a problem with immigration because likely there wouldn't be a need for immigration from Venezuela to begin with.
Yes, that is partially what I'm saying.
Okay.
There wouldn't be as much of a need. People would not be immigrating as much, but there's going to be a process to get to there. The process would look like lifting up sanctions off of Venezuela and temporarily restricting our our immigration policies. That way, they would then be forced to be in Venezuela and hopefully build up their own country, but using their labor.
Well,
That would be the ideal.
well, isn't one of the problems that like a lot of people immigrate to the U.S. because we have better education as well? It's not necessarily just financial, but it's also educational as well. And then they can bring those educational values and that knowledge back into their own country as well. With restricting immigration, then you don't have that kind of
But the
How
movement.
thing,
often does that happen?
Quite a lot.
wait, time out, time out. Wait, time out. Specifically with education. So my roommate, he dates a foreign national, and she's here on an education visa, which when her degree is done or whatever she's doing is done, she has to go back to her country of origin. It is not immigration. It is a temporary residence visa that allows her to stay in the country while she is getting her education.
Sure,
And then
but
once it's done, she either has to get a permanent job or leave,
that is
which she would have to apply for.
but that's a type of
I
immigration.
think that right there is
Mm,
no.
Yeah.
immigration
It's
is not
temporary
staying.
residence because ultimately it is improving her own home country. It's improving her home country if she goes
Yeah.
back.
Well,
And
I would
way we can build them up, and then we get to benefit in the end through trade with that country where they built it up.
Go ahead, McGuire.
Yeah, I would add here, I think, in a lot of cases, especially when you get into graduate degrees, there's a pressure to remain in the United States, and a lot of students do attempt to. So when you're doing research, academically speaking, you're forming professional connections within academics in the university you're at, within the university system you're within, and ultimately within the country that you're in. And so there's a desire from those students to, when they get a master's degree, remain in the United States for their PhDs. And when they get a PhD, apply for postdoctorate positions in the United States. And then when they complete postdoctorates, apply for adjunct professor positions in the United States. This happens a lot, especially with Chinese students. You'll find there's a massive amount of brain drain from China to the United States. It's a major issue for the CCP. And you can look at educational positions in China and how desperate they are for professors because all of their students leave the country to do these graduate studies, and then the students remain in the countries they did their graduate studies in. Their visas might expire, but they end up getting jobs through those connections that they formed in the United States or in Britain or wherever it happens to be, and then they stay in that place. I think, as Joosh was saying, there is a brain drain issue, and the fact that a visa, when it's issued, technically expires at the completion of education doesn't necessarily matter because those connections that are formed are still outside of their home country. So the careers that those connections open up are ultimately also outside of their home countries.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely, which is why I think we also need to restrict education visas, ensure they go back home after doing it. Ensure they go back home.
Also, I'm just
How would you do that?
I mean, yeah, but also I just say like even if like another country does worse overall because we are taking some of their people, I don't see that as a problem. Just free movement. If you want to come here, you should be able to come here. Just period.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on further real quick, Joosh, and then you can say something. I do believe that I do agree with Sonic that free movement is important, and I don't believe that just because you come from a place that place owns you or that you belong to that place. I like, there's so many people who come to the United States and they intend on leaving, but then they come here, they form friends, maybe they make a family here, whatever, and then they actually do basically think that the United States becomes their home and things like that, and then they don't really want to go back to their country of origin and things like that. And so I think people should be free to do that if they want to.
Yeah, this is definitely where I disagree. Because I believe whenever you come to America to be educated, you should be doing it for the purposes of improving your home.
But the U.S. is your home
I
now.
the U.S. is my home, but it's not
Yeah,
necessarily their home.
if someone comes here, home is where you believe you belong. And if someone immigrates over here is on a visa of some kind, either a work visa or education visa, and they come here and they say, "This is my home now. This is where I feel like I belong," then they are a U.S. citizen. they're one of us. This is their home now.
Okay, that's definitely where I disagree.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, call us a false analogy, but if someone moved into your house and said this is their home now, is that their home?
Well, I mean, it would be a false analogy, but
Yeah, no. Like, is that their home now though?
uh, in some cases, sure, right? I mean, with squatters' rights, if it's an abandoned
Yeah, but
property
you
and
have to be,
if it's abandoned and they
I
say this
mean,
is my home now, then it can be considered theirs. Yeah,
I mean, or well, wait. Here's a better one. You hire someone to work on your house for you, and they're not going to live there, but they work on your house. But eventually, like for whatever reason, you get to know them, and you like them, and maybe you hang out with them occasionally, and you have an extra room in your house, and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for a place to stay." You know this person. You're like, "Well, you can come live with me if you pay rent and things like that, and we can work out a deal." Like, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I mean, do I think people should just like hop the border and come in the country? Not necessarily. I do think we should have some vetting, but I mean,
sure.
I think as long as people are in good faith coming here and are willing to pay for themselves, and we shouldn't. Now, if they're coming here to like live off our welfare benefits, yeah, get the fuck out. But that's a different issue.
And yeah,
I think, yeah, the analogy is maybe the wrong way around, because if I'm following correctly here, you're saying that individuals have an obligation to the countries they hail from. So this isn't really a question of somebody moving into your house and saying, "This is my home now." This is a question of somebody moving into somewhere where they're welcomed, and then the place they're moving from demanding that they return back. So
yeah,
this is, moving away from your parents at 18, and then your
yeah.
parents saying, "No, you have to move back in with us.
You're our property.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're." Yeah, exactly.
so again, okay. So I feel like this whole argument is ultimately too focused on the individual, not the wider scope of things.
Well, I mean, we're
Um,
all individualists in nature, so.
I disagree with that, but all right. Um, I heavily disagree with
Hmm.
that. And as I said before, my goal is not on the individual, but rather the the collective, as in the collective exploitation of one over another, and the perpetuating of a cycle. If we maintain, and if we allow any all like whatever brain drain to happen, if we continue to allow, let's say we take all of their intellectuals,
Hmm.
how are we not to blame?
It if they had better amenities or whatever. So the people come to the U.S. because we are, in a sense, the global hegemon. We are the central for economics. We're the central for culture. Everything. We are this central force that is a unifying force. And if people want to come here,
Yeah,
they should be able to come here, um, and be able to leave any shithole that they think that they're living in. If someone from Venezuela wants to come over here because their country is shit, they shouldn't be forced to stay there. They should be able to come here if they want to.
how can we expect that country to ever stop being shit if we keep on taking the people who are able to make it less shit?
Well, it's if they stay in that country, they may not. They're so you want to put a limit on education visas. Well, education visas and these economic visas, these working visas, allow for people to work over here, have an education over here, then be able to go back if they want to, and build
Yeah,
up that country.
I'm not opposed.
But
Wait,
I'm not
you
I
opposed to education visas.
well, you just
Like
said you were
China,
partially. You just said earlier that
I see
there
visas
should be
restricted
limitations
because
on it.
have to go home. They have to go home afterwards. That's the limitation that I said. Because
wait,
we look at China. We have especially during like during Southeast China and Eastern China, but no Southeast Asia, East Asia. There were so many people, especially during the height of the socialist revolutions of that region,
Mhm.
who would go into China and study and then come back, and they were able to greatly change and benefit the country that they went back to. That would not have happened if China just kept them.
We aren't
maybe
forcing people
not
to
all
stay
countries
here.
should exist.
And we're also not forcing people to stay here. It's entirely choice based. If you want to live here,
Yeah,
then
it's entirely
you can live here. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
okay. it's a pretty clear choice to make. You could either live here where things are pretty all right, or you can go
Yeah.
back to the shithole. Even if
But
you are
also-
able to improve it, you're
But
not going
also,
to.
there's people that do immigrate here and become citizens. They still have family and other ties back in their home country, so they can still send. Like you can look at there was a hurricane or whatever several years ago, and people that immigrated from there sent back money to help rebuild that country and to help their families back home.
Money, if you get a stack of $1 million, it's not the $1 million alone is not going to build. It's not going to build a road. It's not going to pave a road. Labor is what does that, and the only things that can labor are people. If we're taking the people, things are not going to get done. You can throw as much money as you want at the issue; it's not going to get solved if there's no people there to solve the issue.
Well, without immigration, there's also less people overall in countries. So immigration and this free movement allows for countries to grow not only economically but also in regards to population as well. So in post industrial industrial nations like the U.S., Japan, you can see this vast majority. Like we're very lenient with our immigration, so we don't have this population problem, this underpopulation problem. You look at Japan, where they have very strict immigration. They're having a population crisis right now, where there's too many old people and not enough young people.
And that is true. But as you said, immigration helps the population.
Mm-hmm.
That's true in terms of the U.S., but it's not
Every
true
country.
in terms of these less developed countries.
It's for every country. Yeah.
If there's immigration with an E, no. If there's more people leaving the country than coming in the country, it's going to hurt the country because there's no one going into Venezuela.
Yeah,
There's
are.
no one going into Venezuela.
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Who's going into Venezuela?
Venezuela is a net exporter of people. But one thing I want to say is, why does anyone owe any allegiance to any nation just because they're born there? Like, why should or why that's not a good way to phrase it. Why does any nation have like inherent ownership over the people that come from it? Why is that legitimate?
That's not my argument. My argument is that it will help uplift them to prevent this issue from continuing. This is an issue, and this is the way to solve it. There's point A and there's point B. This is how we get to point B.
But, well, one, I'm not a utilitarian, so I don't really care. But two, that's really not answering my question, which is individuals. You are arguing that nations have some inherent ownership over people that come from there, and I don't understand why. Like, are people not free agents unto themselves?
No, not necessarily. There's always going to be like an intermediary to perform diplomacy on your behalf. Let's say you go to some country and you are wrongly arrested in that country. You are now going to rely on the United States to do diplomacy for you. Are you saying that the United States should not do that because they don't own you, and therefore you should be forced to do your own diplomacy in a foreign country?
No, but that doesn't always happen anyways to begin with. So, I mean, that's kind of moving. I mean, so like right now in Russia, there is a former U.S. Marine who he's held there by the Russian government because they claimed he was spying. He was spying on Russia for America, which doesn't make sense because this former Marine renounced his citizenship. And during the whole Brittany Griner thing, where we traded that gun runner guy, I forget his name, but when we trade the gun runner guy for Brittany Griner, the U.S. Marine was like, "Hey, when am I getting released?" And the U.S. government basically was like, "Yeah, you can go get fucked, buddy." Which.
So you said he renounced his citizenship?
Yeah, but okay, but what I'm saying is, hold on. But you are saying, you Joosh, I'm not saying the U.S. government. I don't care what the U.S. I mean, I do care, but like you are saying that the U.S. government ought to have jurisdiction over him and be responsible for him, even though he renounces citizenship.
Yeah,
Or are you not arguing that?
He straight up renounced an American. He went over to Russia and he renounced his citizenship.
Sure, but if someone from Venezuela renounced their citizenship to be a U.S. citizen, then that should be okay too, right?
For the kind of okay, I see where you're coming from now. I see where you're coming from. Okay. If someone from Venezuela renounces his citizenship, okay. So you think, okay, so the argument here is that it's best. Are you arguing that it's best overall or simply best for the individual?
It's whatever the
Well, no,
individual feels is best for them.
wait. Well, hold on. What I'm saying is that I believe people should be able to freely choose who they associate with, and it's very clear to me right now that the Venezuelans coming over have no interest in associating with other Venezuelans in Venezuela. Hence why they're coming here. Now they're coming here for economic reasons. Fine, whatever. That's a different discussion. But like those people coming to America want to freely associate with America. And that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
yeah, but why do they want to freely associate with America?
Economics. I'm just gonna be
Economic.
blunt.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Economics. Okay. And what about their economic situation is like? What? Yeah. What about their economic situation?
I mean, we can go back to the beginning of this discussion, but the United States is kind of ass fucking Venezuela. Although I would also argue Venezuela has ass fucked itself for a bunch of economic reasons. But that's
Yeah.
a different discussion altogether. But the point is that the US and Venezuela both are participating in economic, whatever that is causing economic problems, economic, and people in Venezuela are leaving because the prospects are better in America than in Venezuela.
So this just sounds like we are forcing, like we're not really giving them a choice to freely associate. It's not. It seems more coerced
I
because
mean, I
they're
agree.
either. So it's not free.
As it stands
They're
right
not
now,
freely
sure.
associating.
As it stands right
Yeah.
now, maybe,
I
but
mean, arguably, no, nothing can ever be true. I mean, Sonic and I have this discussion, and I can't believe I'm actually partially agreeing with Sonic to a certain degree. But like everything is a result. Every action is a result of actions that have come before it. That's something Sonic has literally said
yeah,
many times,
yeah.
and I partially agree with that. Where we disagree is like whether people can make a choice or not, but that's a different discussion.
Mhm.
But I mean, if we're gonna go down that path, then there's literally no such thing as free will, which I disagree with. So
No, there is such thing as free will.
I don't
They
think so,
could have.
though.
They could have,
But I
despite their
don't.
situations.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with free will,
Despite their
though.
situation,
shut up. Who cares?
it is indeed an aspect of free will to choose to go to America. However, that doesn't mean we are like, that doesn't mean that there's not pressures to do so, to make a choice. There is of course pressures to make a choice. That's obvious.
Yeah.
But where I take issue is where are these pressures coming from, and why are they there to begin with? And if we allow this choice to continue being made, what does it look like in the wider scope of things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, if we go back to the very beginning of this discussion, if we took away everything else and it remained, so if the United States backed off and all that stuff, in theory, you'd be more okay with immigration from Venezuela. But
Yes, of course.
I still think you would still argue that people ought to have a duty to their wherever they came from, which that's where I have the issue with. Like I already see how you and Sonic can rectify your issue, but like my issue with what you're saying is that like people have a duty to their country of origin. I like let's just say in this hypothetical that the United States does, like, we just back off of Venezuela, and for whatever reason the economic situation doesn't change all that much. Maybe it improves a little bit, but Venezuela is still a shithole country, and Venezuelans are still coming over the border. Would you still be against that? And two, do you think the Venezuelans who are coming over the border should go back to their country eventually, and why?
Again, I do think. Okay, would I be as against it if the U.S. backed off and Venezuela was still a shithole? Um, I would
Sorry if I throw a
be.
bunch of things at you at once. I apologize.
I'm gonna go unlock the door for
Okay,
my
so I would be
fiance.
less opposed to it. I would be less opposed to it, but I wouldn't be entirely unopposed to it.
Okay.
That would be a much better situation than what it is now. But I still ultimately think, for the sake of like their own, for the sake of their family, like for example, if those tons of countries I agree with more. But I don't want to live there simply because I'm not. I agree with China more on a lot of issues. Does that make me want to move to China? No, because I'm not Chinese. I'm still American, and I feel a duty to my own country. Because if I leave America, that means that's one less person that's going to be there to actually enact my beliefs and make the situation better for the 300 million people who are here. Rather, so just moving to China would be kind of abandoning
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
And America, whether I like it or not, these are the lands which nurtured me, that raised me, that brought me up to where I am today. So I do feel like I do owe America something.
Okay.
Do you think you owe anything to your parents?
To my parents, yes.
Why?
Why they raised me.
Why does that matter?
Why does that matter?
Why does
Okay,
it
they could
matter?
have just left me on the side of the street.
Sure, but why?
Why does it matter?
Yeah, but why does it matter necessarily
So,
what they did
I
in the
mean,
past?
Wait, Sonic, let me say something. So yes, they did raise you, but they also brought you into this world.
Yeah,
So I
which I'm
think
thankful for.
well, I mean, I'm thankful too that my parents brought. I'm not one of those nihilists that says the other thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, listen, they brought you into this world, and I'm thankful my parents raised me. But I also thought I would hope they have an obligation to take care of me because they brought me into this world.
Yeah,
So
they have an obligation.
I think it's
Yeah,
equal.
so it's an equal relationship. They have an obligation to me, and I have an obligation to them. It's not a one-sided relationship. That's how relationships work. No relationship is one-sided.
Do you have an obligation
It's
to?
a
Do you have an obligation to an abusive mother? Do you have an obligation to an abusive mother?
to an abusive mother.
Yes. She brought you
Not
into
as
this.
much,
She
but
brought you into this world. She raised you. She didn't put you on the side of the street, right?
yeah,
But
I'm
which is
taking notes.
yeah. So I mean, in that extent, you have some, but
why?
not much.
Why though?
Why?
Why do you
Because
haven't
you said
like
you said
if she asked you, hey, let's say you were a millionaire and she asked you for $100, do you have an obligation to financially help her by any means?
Your abusive mother. Your abusive mother.
Your abusive mother.
no, but I would say if she gets old, you do have an obligation to tend to her,
Why?
just as
Your
she did.
abusive mother.
Yeah, your abusive mother.
Why?
Yeah.
Because she still, despite her abuse, she still raised you. She still gave you shelter, as you said. So in her old age, you should provide for her to some extent as well,
Okay.
even if it's not like you don't have to be with her step by step, holding her hand or nothing.
So I'm the type of person, I'm not sure about Delta. I'm the type of person where you have no obligation to anybody. You know you don't owe anyone respect and no one owes you respect. It is
Yeah, I agree with
everything
that.
is based off of mutual understanding. But you have
Reciprocity.
you have no obligation to anything or anyone.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would go further to say relationships require reciprocity. So, if you do something good for me, I'll do something good for you, and if I do something good for you, you should do something good for me. Now, am I going to put a gun to your head and make you do it? No, but I mean, relationships are built off of reciprocity.
You're not ought to do it.
Yes, there is reciprocity to the previous examples I gave. Like your mother sheltered you, so even if she was abusive, like later in life, you're gonna shelter her, even though if she tended to you more, then you'll reciprocate that in the end, or throughout the process. So there is some reciprocation there going on.
But it's
I'm
not.
not stating if
But neither of us say you ought to
like
do it. Well, you're saying you ought to do something, but me and him are saying it'd be nice to do it, but you're not ought to do it. You don't have to do it. You don't. There's no should in there. No
And I think
force.
I would say too, with these relationships, you're when you're treating it, as this reciprocal thing, you're transactionalizing it. And I don't think you should hold anybody accountable to a transaction that they didn't consensually participate in, right? If you're born, you pop into the world, you didn't have the choice in being sheltered by these individuals. Now, I don't like the idea of approaching relationships as transactional matters. I don't think that they should be. So I would kind of disagree with this idea of owed and whatever. It should be an act of love and all that, but if you want to transactionalize things, I don't think it's really a good use case to do so in an unconsensual relationship.
I mean, real quick, I have a friend, a very close friend, that if he was like, "Hey man, I'm like destitute, can you help me out?" I would do anything in my power to help them out. but it's because he and I built up a relationship over many years, and we've demonstrated many times to each other that we are ride or die for each other. So, I mean, there is a point, there is a threshold where relationships do become about unconditional love, but I think they have to make it there. And in the case that Sonic and I are talking about, like, in theory, there's an abuse that gets in the way of that unconditional love.
Right.
Go ahead, Joosh.
Okay. So there is an abuse. Okay, so in a more broader context, there have been countries where you're familiar with stateless people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that that country wrongs you and just revokes your citizenship without you having any other citizenship. Do you owe that country anything? At that point, I would say no. Um, because that relationship has been severed entirely. Um, so I would not say you owe that country anything. You don't, and it's not necessarily an inherent thing, but it is a continuing of that relationship, and it is primarily to benefit your community, your people who around you,
Alright.
to prevent others from turning up like you. You don't people necessarily don't want people to come up in the same conditions that they were in, and in order to prevent that, that area needs people there to uplift it. Is it fair? No, not necessarily. Is it necessary? Absolutely.
Okay. So let's say you
So-
have a government.
Wait.
Okay.
So one problem. So you brought up stateless people. I have no problem with stateless people, and there shouldn't be a problem with stateless people. The only reason why there are stateless people have problems is because other countries require that you have a state to belong to. And I don't know why. That just doesn't make sense. I don't know why you can't just be a free agent unto yourself. So
Because it has a matter of like identification. So anyway, that's a whole different topic.
Okay.
yeah,
Um,
that is a different topic. But I mean,
So
like the only reason why stateless people are a problem is because states require you to be owned by other states.
So I'm
So.
gonna give you a hypothetical because I was trying to do the abusive parent thing. Now let's bring up to a state or government, right? If let's say a state or government, right, second you're out of the womb, they beat you, imprison you, etc., but they provide you food and shelter via this prison. Are you obligated to respect that state structure, that governmental structure?
like governmental structure? No.
The state or governmental structure. The state.
Joosh confirmed to be anti-North Korean.
What do
like,
you mean?
do you have-
I am very pro.
But like, do you have an obligation to respect that authority, either the state or that government that imprisoned you, beat you, etc., but they provide you food and shelter via this prison? Is there an obligation that you have to support them?
You don't have an obligation to any state whatsoever. You don't have an obligation to a state.
Okay.
What you do have an obligation to
Well, then,
is
let-
a people.
But if that people, well, I do people and state as the same thing. So that's why I was saying
Okay, the
state or
is
government.
of the people.
The state is
I
the people.
The
disagree.
state is derived from the people. It is comprised of people, but it is not the people.
I would say it's the people. The people are the state.
I disavow. Well,
The state
Well,
But
is
social
anyways,
contract theory, yes.
anyways, so semantics aside, if the people, the second you're out of the womb, imprison you and do all of these things, harsh treatment, but they get you food and shelter via this prison, right? Do you have an obligation towards that country, those people, even though they treat you with this malice, this bad intent?
no.
But you're born into it. They're
Oh,
taking
no.
care of you, aren't they? They're giving you food and shelter, right?
It's bad intent.
Well, they're mistreating you. They're-
No. I mean, listen, Josh is being consistent. So
Well, I mean, you could even so let's say the bare minimum for everybody is this food and shelter, but they imprison everybody, and they beat everybody, right?
Okay, why are they doing this?
Could be for several different reasons.
look, we're beating a dead horse here. I think Josh is being consistent in terms of if they're abusing you, you have no obligation to them. I think in terms of like the Venezuelans coming over, I don't think he would necessarily say that Venezuela is abusing those people, so they
Well,
in his mind, they would still have an obligation to Venezuela. I
wouldn't-
disagree.
I mean, I
but
wouldn't
do you
quite
agree
call
with,
it-
Would you agree with that?
Well, no, he's not quite
Yeah,
being
yeah.
that consistent because he said that you still have an obligation to an abusive mother or abusive father, as long as
Well,
they
we were
sheltered you.
nebulous. Like, what is that? We were nebulous on what that means because abuse, abuse is very broad.
Sure,
Like,
physical, emotional,
we-
etc.
well, and even like light abuse versus like if your mother if your mom and dad if your mom and dad spank you, which you consider abuse, Sonic, like
Yeah.
not everyone considers that abuse necessarily. So
Sure.
like even what is abuse, parental abuse isn't totally the
Usually,
same everywhere.
when people say abuse when it comes to parental structures, they usually mean some sort of harsh treatment of some kind that's outside of normal means.
I would say unusual, yeah. But anyways, back to the topic of immigration.
Immigration.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't I don't believe in general that anyone really has an obligation. If they don't want to associate with a nation, they shouldn't have to, and it doesn't matter if that nation treated them well or not. Like, you could be I think you could be born in the most privileged part of a nation society, and if you want to go live somewhere else, that's your prerogative.
Yeah, and I think getting back to the core topic of migration, and especially the discussion on education that we had with it, at some level, every nation needs migration to exist, immigration to exist, whatever you want to call it. It has to they have to take in some people at some point, right? So, if we discuss this educational topic a little bit more, where do universities come from? Where does that line of thinking come from? Where does that
The Catholic
intellectual
Church.
well, but like seriously, where do you get those people who have that knowledge to pass down to develop these institutions and so forth? Like Delta said, I think historically, you have a lot of missionaries who serve this role of exposing, especially Western ideas to groups that wouldn't otherwise have that exposure. But looks like we lost him. Okay, I'll keep going.
He said he had to go at about 45, so
Yeah, we're about
he may
hitting
not-
45,
he may have just had
yeah.
to leave.
We're about hitting 45, yeah.
Huh,
Yeah.
time flies.
He could have said something. He'd be like, hey,
Well, I
sorry, I
think-
gotta go.
Whatever, it's fine.
All right.
No worries. At some level, though, you have to import people to fill these social functions that might not exist in native cultures to a nation or something like that. So I think a good example is Israel's fourth prime minister, actually, Golda Meir. Oh, he's back.
Oh, he's back.
So she was from modern day Ukraine.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hey, you have like some sort of issue,
Okay, hello?
Josh? Joosh, did you have some? You left. Did you have some sort of issue?
Hold up, having difficulties.
You sound very faint, yeah.
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 Are you in another room? Very well. Anyways, just keep talking, McGuire. We'll
Yeah.
wait till we'll just keep talking till he gets back.
All right, for sure. So the fourth prime minister of Israel, Golda Meir, she was from modern day Ukraine. Actually went to school, or her alma mater, her university alma mater was a university in Wisconsin, actually. And then this knowledge that obviously she's accrued through time in Ukraine, time in Wisconsin, time in the United States. She immigrates to Israel when the nation is formed, and ultimately applies it as a leader in their government. So I think this is a good example of this idea that governments, societies require people with skills accrued elsewhere to enter the country, to introduce those ideas to the country. So I don't particularly I'm not really sure where I draw the line on where a nation should or should not act in its own self-interest, but I do think if your concern is about brain drain, you still have to acknowledge that brain drain on some level is necessary. Not necessarily brain drain from your country, but brain drain from other countries into your country to fuel your academia, to fuel your government, to fuel your societal development. So then if your policy is that immigration is bad because it results in this loss of ideas, you have to acknowledge that those ideas came there in the first place from some older immigrants. So then you loop back to this idea of, okay, well, how can we be consistent about this? Well, maybe allowing free and open movement, just this osmosis of people, will naturally equilibrate things to where they should be, because people will go to where they see openings, to where they see demand for their skill sets, and this will ultimately um, allow these societies to grow.
There we go.
Yeah. I think he's on his
Joosh.
phone now.
Yo,
We got some feedback.
all right, good. Wait, no, feedback. Okay, never mind. That's not good.
We got some feedback. Good.
Yeah, it's doing good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, McGuire, and it's interesting because this has been traditionally. I mean, this is how it's been forever. Like, I mean, medieval households would literally lords would send their sons to go live in other medieval households to like learn from them, not just like within their kingdom, like in foreign kingdoms. Like you would have like British nobles being sent to the Holy Roman Empire, or Italian nobles being sent to France, or Spanish, all that stuff. They were sent all over the place, and there was just kind of like this exchange of ideas through that, and it was also kind of a hostage situation so that the kingdoms wouldn't fight each other and things like that. So
Okay, yeah, that's great points. However, it was always for the betterment of the family that they were part of. Like, whenever you sent your
Sure.
daughter off to marry someone else, it was often for the betterment of your family. And
Yeah.
the daughter had an obligation to her family back then. That was the underlying tone. It's always been that way. You've always had an obligation to your family or to your tribe. That's how it's always been. Because
Sure.
outside of those, historically, outside the tribe, there was death. If you were exiled from the tribe, you would die.
But we don't see that anymore nowadays.
Yeah.
We don't really see that as much nowadays.
Well, yeah, and not only that, just because a tradition exists doesn't mean that traditions are not inherently good. Like traditions have to prove why they are good, and I think they have to constantly prove why they're good. And if they're not good, we should throw them away.
Progressivism.
Yeah, I know, cringe.
I'm sorry, Delta. You're a progressive.
I mean, technically yes,
Yeah.
but like at the same time, I'm not a true revolutionary, because true revolutionaries, like the French revolutionaries, which is where revolutionary idea comes from and progressivism comes from, they said we ought to throw things away just because we can. Whereas I'm like, listen, if it serves a purpose, we should keep it, but if it doesn't, let's get rid of it.
We
So
should progress
I'm like
towards better
tackling
means.
both.
We should progress towards better
And
means.
where we disagree is the qualifiers of purpose. Like, I feel like y'all have a more individual focus. I don't. So
Yeah.
we're disagreeing on like what qualifies as
These base means, and then everything built up off of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is first principles, and like Sonic and I today were sharing all sorts of gay little frickin' whatchamacallits, those quizzes and stuff, and he and I were very consistently very similar and things like that. We both believe in individualism and things like that.
Then why do you say that you never agree though?
What?
I remember whenever I first joined the VC, you were like, I can't believe I agreed with Sonic.
Wait, which VC are you talking about?
This one right here.
You said it earlier.
Oh, I
you
mean,
said it earlier, yeah.
I mean, listen, Sonic and I agree on a lot of things, but there's a few foundational things that we disagree on.
Like free will.
He doesn't agree. Yeah, free will is like one of the biggest ones. He and I disagree very vehemently on free will. Like, I believe there is free will exists somewhere, but Sonic doesn't believe in free will at all. That like he believes everything is a reaction to something else, basically.
So, Sonic, would you consider yourself to be a vulgar materialist?
Vulgar materialist? I mean, I'd probably
You'd
say
have to define it.
Yeah. I know materialism. What's a vulgar materialist?
Vulgar means like spoken materialist.
Spoken?
Vulgar materialist would be something which it would be everything is merely a reaction to its environment. There is nothing outside of the environment. There's also nothing outside the reaction itself.
I mean,
there is no object outside of it. Everything is a purely deterministic thing.
that just sounds like regular materialism.
No, no. Okay, as in with regular materialism, there's all kinds of different branches of it. Marx, for example, he outright rejected vulgar materialism. That materialism came out of the French Revolution, I believe. If I recall correctly.
I mean, I haven't looked
Goddamn
into the different.
Robespierre.
I haven't looked into the different kinds of materialism. I would just say, for right now, I'm just materialist. I would have to look into the other ones
Okay,
to
so
fully
you
say.
believe that. So you believe everything can be dumbed down to physical and chemical reactions.
Yes, physical reactions altogether. Yeah,
Ooh.
chemical reactions are also physical
Okay.
reactions, but everything's reactionary.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
So
no.
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
But, I mean,
libertarian that's not free
Sonic
will.
and yeah, which I don't know how that works, but Sonic. I mean,
works.
Sonic. Well, it's funny because like Sonic doesn't believe in free will, but he does believe in individual rights, which I'm like, okay, how does that work?
Yeah, if
Self
it
ownership.
was a robot, then like okay.
It's based around in a sense, so everything's reactionary in a sense, but we should have, in a sense, we should try to strive for some sort of reactionary thing that allows people to have specific rights like freedom of speech, freedom of, well, movement, since that's the really big thing.
How can he choose to strive if there's no free?
Well, it's not necessarily
There's
choosing
no
to
free will.
strive.
There's no
It's something that I would like to see in the future if it's possible, if that's where it's leaning towards.
Interesting.
So you think there's just one general direction, and you hope that's the one.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I'm a hard determinist.
Um,
I'm a hard determinist. Yeah.
And
And
I would say,
fatalist. And fatalist.
well, and I would say I'm a soft determinist. So like I do agree with Sonic to a certain extent, but not as much.
I'm also a fatalist.
Yeah,
Everything's fated to happen a specific way, and it can never change.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were 9,000 possible realities, and you were born in this one, and you were gay in Iran.
Yeah.
It was fated to be that way.
Yeah. You were fated to
Yeah,
get stoned
that's so
and pushed
true.
out of a helicopter.
That's crazy. Bro. You got stoned and thrown out of a helicopter? What?
Yeah. They're throwing stones
That's
up
the
at
Iranian way, man.
as you're falling down, they're fucking throwing stones at you. Yeah.
Islamic Pinochet, my face one.
Well, I mean, that's what they do in Iran.
they throw stones at you as you're falling out of a helicopter.
Well, I mean, I think you get a choice on whether you get stoned. Well, okay, I think getting stoned to death is a woman thing. I think in Islamic culture they stone women to death.
Yeah, bro. What would you like to be executed? Stoned or thrown out of a helicopter? And the nigga just says both.
Make them work for their money. So we got self-ownership warrior in the chat.
Yeah.
He's asking Mr. Sonic here, if
Yeah.
there's no free will, then what's the point of in debates and trying to convince people of things? What's the point in trying to do anything? Which I'm just going to cut you off at the pass and say you're not a nihilist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's
like,
reasons for things. It's just that everything's reactionary towards other things, but there's reasons for things.
Doesn't that make like self-improvement though? Doesn't that make that difficult?
Not
Like how
necessarily.
do you rationalize
No,
self-improvement?
there's a good reason for self-improvement. Like if you self-improve, you better your lot in life, and then you'll live a better life and things like that. And so in Sonic's case, like you as this flesh bag going through the universe, you want to live the best life possible, so you're willing to engage in self-improvement, which you may have to struggle for a while, but the results will be better for you long term for your flesh bag, meat bag self.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
based around your
I-
your brain chemistry and it's nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
I think both of them for
Alright.
individuals can play either one plays a bigger part than the other or vice versa. Or even just about neutral altogether. The spectrum.
All right.
Interesting.
Sonic does not believe in the light of God, but the light of God shines upon Sonic.
Oh, real.
Me,
It was faded.
the true
Sonic,
Christian.
it was simply faded.
Me, the true
It
Christian,
was
who's more
stated-
Christian than the other Christians.
Let's say John Calvin would love you right now, bro. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sonic is basically an atheist John Calvin.
That's wild.
And was it
John
one
Calvin without the Bible.
in one of our discords that we talk about all the fucking time? I am probably like the most Christian non-Christian there.
Yeah.
Which one, bro?
We don't worry about it. We'll invite it to you later if you
Yeah.
want, but
we'll tell you about
we
it
won't
later.
speak it here on air.
Yeah.
Invite me, bro.
We
Well,
want plausible deniability that we were in the server when they're raided by the FBI.
Yeah, now you're talking to an ML right now. I think you're destined to be that way now.
Mr. Warrior, you should read my piece on thelostmuse.net about why modern Christians aren't Christian and see if you agree with me.
You should read it too. You should read it.
No,
I think
he's
I've
read
read
it.
it before.
Yeah, and
And I
you
mostly
said you
agree.
agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I was
Yeah,
mostly
maybe-
talking about Protestants in that because I'm surrounded by lots of Protestants, and Josh was like, "Yeah, it is mostly Protestants who are like that,
Yeah.
and even
Yeah.
Catholics to a certain extent."
Yeah. Just make
I
sure
It's
that
unfortunate.
That's fired.
just make sure that none of them go near a school.
I
Ha
think
ha. Hard.
I will say, I do think that the orthodoxy, which you consider yourself, Josh, I think Orthodox Christianity is basically the only true sect of Christianity that's left, because it does focus on the spiritualism of Christianity and the spiritualism of Christ and things like that, whereas Catholicism is like a corporation basically, and Protestantism is just unironic schizo-cultism basically now.
Also, the
Yeah,
Bible
they're
itself
the
says
constantly-
the Bible itself also says that there shouldn't be a single authority, which is Catholicism.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Anyways,
So we've been going for about an hour.
Yep.
Do we want to start wrapping up? Maybe do book reports?
Yeah, I gotta get going soon.
gotta go
so
on?
let's start
Okay.
wrapping up.
okay.
And
Yeah.
So how we normally do it, Josh, is we do final statements, and then we offer a book to read, and then we engage in a gay orgy and leave.
Yeah.
That's so epic.
All right. So since you are our
cool.
guest, we're gonna have McGuire go first.
Oh, come on now. Okay. Closing thoughts first.
Yeah.
I
You've
suppose.
spoken the least too. So
Yeah, I have, haven't I? I suppose. First of all, I want to have more of this free will discussion. That was fun. Hearing Sonic's position, I think it's totally wrong.
Sure.
Learn some quantum
Yeah.
mechanics, bro. But
Oh, I know about it.
but okay. Then I don't have to lecture you on quantum indeterminacy. But
Yeah. I mean, I have my
yeah,
own theory.
and in any case,
I have my own theory about that, but we'll get to
it's
that
closing
Monday.
statement, Sonic. Shut
Yeah.
the fuck up.
Fucking make shove your
yeah,
dick in my
Monday.
mouth already. God damn.
Okay, come over here. So, in any case, I think the immigration discussion is important because obviously, movement of people, as we discussed, shapes cultures. I think it goes both ways, though. And if you want to take a utilitarian perspective, I think that because it goes both ways, you should embrace. Things will naturally osmosify themselves to where they should be. So that's kind of where I stand on that.
All right. Now we'll go, Joosh.
Now go Joosh.
Now
Okay.
go Joosh. Yeah.
Ultimately, I believe that immigration relies heavily on the factors which are impacting the nation which people are immigrating out of. The end goal would be free and open immigration, but that's in an ideal world, and we do not live in an ideal world, so we have to account for that in one way or another. And I do not believe that freedom of choice should be the sole deterministic factor.
Okay.
Let's see. All right.
Okay.
As for a book, I was not
No,
prepared.
wait, hold on. Time
No.
out. We'll do book reports last.
after.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
All right, I'll go next.
Okay.
You get the last say, Sonic. So basically, I'm just gonna keep it short and sweet. People should associate with who they want to associate. Boom.
Okay.
Beautiful.
People have no obligation to anyone or anything, not even nations or your parents. I mean, immigration's also been vastly known to improve outcomes for everyone involved and improves GDP. It helps against replacement after post-industrialization, etc. It's just immigration helps everyone and is a good thing overall.
All right.
Yeah.
Now we'll do book reports.
Now we do
and
books.
Joosh will go last because he is he's searching furiously through his library right now. He's sitting, and I know the SpongeBob library. You know the library
Yeah.
SpongeBob has
Oh,
underneath his
beautiful.
house.
Jealous
That's
of it.
where Joosh is sitting right now. He actually lives in a pineapple under the sea.
I do.
So my book of the week, which we do 2 books of the week, even though we call them both books of the week, my book of the week is going to be the most important tome on immigration of all time, which is Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, all 8 volumes. All right.
Oh God.
So, Mr. Sonic, do you have a book?
Yeah, you should read the Communist Manifesto.
Shut the fuck up. Get a better book. Read Rawls and then recommend it.
At least, like, bruh, at least recommend Capital or something.
Das
Yeah,
Kapital.
recommend one that's actually marginally readable.
like Mein Kampf.
Or, like,
Anyways.
the
Like Mein Kampf,
manifesto
right?
doesn't even.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. McGuire.
All right. I think this isn't related to immigration at all. Okay, maybe indirectly, super indirectly, but it's came up in conversation a couple times in the last few days. It's the perhaps only fan fiction in human history that has scared the gay out of more people than it has inspired it in. We're gonna go with Dante's Inferno.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Mr. Joosh.
Okay, I'm just gonna say the book. What I've been reading right now is Maoism: A Global History by Julia Lovell.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I mean that's a solid one. Alrighty.
Yeah, you should also read the
Thank you all
Bible.
for coming.
You should also read the Bible because
Shut
that
the
will
fuck
make
up.
you the
Shut the
most.
fuck up.
Okay.
That will make you anti-Christian.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Shut
Okay,
the fuck
I
up.
get no. Read the Bible instead. Yeah, read the Bible.
Read the Bible.
Memorize it.
Memorize every passage,
Memorize
every
it.
word,
Word
every
by
word.
word. I will be quizzing you. You will have to do a full reading of the Bible
Give me
from
the
memory.
253rd word.
Of the book of
Exactly.
Job. Of the book of Job. Alrighty. Thank you
Alright.
all for coming, and
Yes.
you all are fucking cringe.
I fucking hate y'all.
Yeah.
You should kill yourselves.
I
Yeah.
hate y'all.